Hello and welcome to Calibre Conversations, our online book festival where we chat to a range of authors in the hope of introducing you to books to add to your reading list and get you enjoying more books in National Year of Reading. My name is Emma and I'm joined by Calibre supporter and volunteer Mark, and we're delighted to be chatting to award-winning author Vaseem Khan, whose series include the Baby Ganesh Investigation Agency, Malabar House and more recently the Q Mysteries, which were a James Bond spin-off which gives central stage to the Secret Service's technology expert. So first of all, a big hello and welcome to you, Vaseem.
Well, hello, guys, and thank you for inviting me on, and hello to all of your lovely listeners.
Now, can we start just right at the very beginning by finding out a little bit more about you and your background before you wrote your first novel? So you've spoken about working for 10 years in India. So what did you do there and what else had you done before on your journey to becoming a writer?
All right. Well, the first thing to say is that I was born in London, in England, but my parents were from India, from the subcontinent. I grew up here in a corner of East London called Newham, and when it was time to go to university, I actually didn't want to go. I wanted to write a novel. I'll tell you about my first novel in another question. But my parents, of course, being Asian parents, they decided that the only proper subject for me to study was accountancy, medicine, or law. And so I ended up doing accounts at the London School of Economics. And I'm not going to say accountancy is boring because everybody else will say it for me. It's the old joke about what's the difference between lawyers and accountants. Well, at least accountants know that they're boring. Um, I'm probably doing a disservice. Look, I don't regret the fact that I did accounts. It gave me the underpinnings of a great career. I didn't go on to become a certified chartered accountant, as my parents wanted. We had a massive fight, and I rebelled. And when Asian people rebel, Asian youngsters, we don't go off and get tattoos and do wild things. I joined a telemarketing operation instead, just to annoy my parents, and did that for a few months until I got fed up of being shouted at by Glaswegians who were annoyed at me interrupting their daytime soap operas to try and sell them some membership to some golf course. And then after that, I saw the light. I became a management consultant. So I was using my accountancy that I'd studied at degree level. I became a management consultant. I joined a small consultancy, and then they got a massive contract to work in India. And I remember my boss, who was this lovely silver-haired gentleman from Kent named Terry Brewer, who came into the office one day and he looked around and he walked over to me and he said, Vaz, you look as if you can speak Indian. Would you like to come to India with me? He was a cheeky guy. He had a real good sense of humor, and we ended up going out to India in 1997 to work as management consultants to a firm, a very large firm, building five-star environmentally friendly hotels called eco-hotels around the country. And I went for 3 months, spent 10 amazing years watching this country transform from a pre-industrial power to the near global superpower that we think of India as today. And I saw the beginnings of this westernization and globalization that came in and transformed urban centers. I was based largely in Mumbai, as Bombay is now called, but I traveled around the country. And we have this tendency in the West to mythologize India, sometimes turn it into a land of swamis and snake charmers, and there's plenty of that. But there's also this new India of skyscrapers and shopping malls and call centers, of which I'm sure all of your listeners have been the beneficiaries at some at some time or another. But set against this is the legacy of old India, massive slums and caste prejudice and religious intolerance that sometimes raises its head. So I saw all of those things over the course of that decade. And that's what prompted me to write my first novel when I finally got back.
You were saying that you'd always wanted to write a novel, and then you got slightly sidetracked by other things. Then you had your time in India. What and that gave you the inspiration, but what was the actual? What was it gave you the opportunity to sit down and start writing a novel?
Well, to be fair, I wrote my first novel when I was 17, Mark, because I knew I wanted to be a writer when I was very young, and it wasn't until I hit the library system that I got the kind of range of books that allowed me to expand my imagination. Because we didn't have much money. My dad was a laborer in an industrial bakery, And so we didn't have much money to go to bookshops and buy books. But once I hit the libraries, I realized that this is the kind of thing I wanted to do. And I wrote my first novel age 17 because I'd been reading Sir Terry Pratchett's amazing Discworld novels. And I thought, A, this looks easy, and B, I can do this. And so I did. I wrote a comic fantasy age 17, sent it in to some agents, waited for the results. And then, unfortunately, there was one small problem with my cunning plan, which was, of course, that that first book was a bit rubbish. And so I didn't go anywhere. I did, as I said, have to go to university and study accounts instead. But I wrote another 7 novels across all sorts of genres, literary fiction, historical fiction, all sorts, over the next 20 odd years. So while I was working in India, a little bit of time working in China, wherever I was, I would write a book, finish it off, send it into agents, and then wait for an avalanche of rejection letters to come my way. And it wasn't until the age of 40 that I was finally published with that first book, which I believe your next question is about.
Yeah, so well, the perfect segue into that then. So yeah, your first novel was The Unexpected Inheritance of Inspector Chopra, where we meet the inspector and his elephant companion, Baby Ganesh. A detective duo of a retired policeman and baby elephant is scarcely kind of a conventional duo. So what gave you the idea of doing that, and how confident were you that it would work? And actually, why do you think it works so well?
Well, well, I can safely say that before this, nobody had thought of putting an elephant into a crime novel, and people often ask me, "What were you smoking when you came up with that idea?" Well, I don't smoke, as it happens, so it was a perfectly lucid decision, although a slightly insane one. So the reason that I did that, so just to give people who don't know the series an idea. So, The Unexpected Inheritance of Inspector Chopra is the first in what I call the Baby Ganesh agency novels. And it sees a middle-aged policeman from the Mumbai police force. He's in his late 40s, who's forced into early retirement. And on his last day in office, he comes across a murder, which he then subsequently decides to investigate. But what also happens to him on that last day, as you've alluded to, is that he inherits a 1-year-old baby elephant. And what do you do if you if you have to take care of a small elephant and you live on the 15th floor of a tower block, as Inspector Chopra does, as most middle class Mumbai residents do? Well, you have to read the book to find out. But the book is essentially, it's a murder mystery, but it's also my chronicle of this amazing country that I lived in for 10 years and that I saw changing. So it's it's a chronicle of modern India and how it's going through this incredible change. But it's also, of course, a murder mystery. And it ended up, I never expected it to be published. I ended up on, it was published. I got a big deal with a big publisher, and I ended up on BBC Breakfast talking to millions of people about it. And it ended up translated into 17 languages around the world. I subsequently wrote 5 books in the series, and it essentially gave me a career. And why is it that it's worked? I mean, what is it about this duo that people have responded to so well? I think it's because it's universal. Inspector Chopra is a serious man who takes the plight of his nation, the social ills that he sees in modern India, where the rich just get richer and the poor just get poorer. He takes that to heart. He's been a policeman since the age of 18. So for nearly 30 years, he's patrolled the beat, and he's come to understand his city, the light and the dark of modern Mumbai. And I think that is something universal that we can all relate to no matter where we are in the world, because all cities suffer from similar issues of inequalities. But also, I think the elephant, I have to be clear, it doesn't fly, it doesn't sing, it doesn't solve the mysteries. It's a symbol of India, but it's also a symbol of hope, because India does have this amazing appeal to us, especially in the West. And partly that's a result of fiction and film and all the rest of it. But partly it's because if you ever do travel to India, and those of you who've gone there, you will know this, you will realize that Indians are the most hospitable people on the planet. And they have a saying, guest is God, which means that if you're there, they really do roll out the red carpet for you. You'd think that they wouldn't do that because of what happened with the Raj. But modern Indians are too intent on looking forward to dwell on the past too much. And so for me, the duo of Chopra and his little baby elephant, they struck a chord with people, and people still write to me from around the world, and they always ask two questions. Because I haven't written a book in that series for about 5 years, they say, when are you going to write the next one? And the second question they always ask is a threat. Make sure nothing happens to that baby elephant.
Just sliding back more than half a century to the Malabar House series, that's set in, again, very turbulent times. Post-independence India coming to terms with partition and with looking for its own place in the world. And its hero, is India's first woman police detective, in itself a very difficult role at many levels. Was it always your aim in the Malabar House books to provide a social commentary alongside cracking detective stories? Or did that emerge inevitably from your extremely vivid recreation of India around 1950?
Well, it was always my intention to explore that particular period because of its importance. So, for those of you or those who don't know, India became independent in 1947 after about 300 years of the British presence there. And my book, my series, the second series, is a set of historical mysteries called the Malabar House novels, beginning with a book called Midnight at Malabar House, which is set in 1950. So it's just 3 years after independence. Gandhi's been assassinated, the horrors of partition when India was divided into India and Pakistan and East Pakistan, which later became Bangladesh. And a million Indians killed each other in religious riots. So all of that's hanging over the country. And it's a period that's not been explored very much in fiction. There's a literary novel called A Suitable Boy by Vikram Seth, which is one of my favorite books, which is about 5 million pages long. But no one's ever done it using crime fiction. And so I wanted to talk about that period because I believe that that period, when India was trying to decide what kind of country it was going to be after the British had left, largely set in place the foundations for the India that we see today. And partly that's because of the legacy that the British left behind. And that includes the English curriculum in schools. It includes the legal system, which India still follows, which is partly the British system. And it includes infrastructure like the train network. And, of course, we can argue that a lot of these things were created to allow the British to rule over India. But the fact is that India has also now, in the fullness of time, benefited from these things. So what I try and do with the Malabar House novels, because I grew up in the UK, lived in India for 10 years, is to try and give a very balanced perspective of India and the time just after the colonial period. And I always say this, I always say that not every Brit who went to India was a sinner, and not every Indian is a saint. And what I mean by that is that many Brits went to India during the Raj not to conquer, but because they were told that there are jobs for them in the Indian civil service, in the military. Many went as missionaries to try and help. And when it comes to partition, as I've said, a million Indians killed each other. It wasn't the Brits who did the murdering there, it was ordinary Indians. Now, of course, the Brits were slightly culpable because they didn't supervise partition properly. But ultimately, I think there are good and bad, there's good and bad on both sides. And what I try and do with the Malabar House novels is explore some of that amazing history of the people involved. And that first book, Midnight at Malabar House, starts, as you say, with India's first female police detective who qualifies. Nobody knows what to do with her, so they shove her into Bombay's smallest police station called Malabar House with a whole bunch of rejects and misfits. So if there are any people here who like Mick Herron's Slow Horses series, well, this is a similar kind of setup. And the Times newspaper actually said of the Malabar House novels, think Mick Herron in Bombay. And then my Inspector Persis Wadia, she's working with an English forensic scientist named Archie Blackfinch, who is come to Bombay to try and help the Bombay service set up its own forensic science lab. And then an English diplomat is murdered in that first book, Midnight at Malabar House. And so they're both off. They're trying to solve the murder as we explore this incredibly vivid, as you say, era.
Now, the India-based books have been hugely successful. The latest of the Malabar series, but I hope not the last, The Edge of Darkness, has just come out. However, you've also written your first psychological thriller, The Girl in Cell A, which is set in the small-town US, and embarked on a new series featuring Q, James Bond's favourite boffin, beginning with Quantum Menace. What persuaded you to try such different settings, and did they involve extra research?
Well, that's quite a broad question to cover. Okay, so let's break that up a little. So, well, The Age of Darkness, which is the sixth in the Malabar House series, has just come out. So I'll give you two lines about that because I really loved writing that book. And in this one, so Inspector Persis Wadia has been banished to the northeastern jungles of India, a place called the Naga Hills district, which is home to tribals who are very keen on making war on each other and then lopping off each other's heads and using them to decorate their tribal properties with. And so Persis ends up in an old colonial hotel called the Hotel Victoria in that region. And called upstairs to the top suite one day, which is locked. She breaks in, finds a headless corpse, which turns out to be the corpse of the local governor of the Naga Hills. And so it's essentially a locked room mystery. It's a closed circle mystery as well, which means that there's only a certain number of suspects who are the ones who are her fellow residents in the Hotel Victoria out in this jungle terrain. And, they comprise Europeans and Americans and Brits. So what we have is a very Agatha Christie style mystery set against an insurgency because the local tribes, after India became independent, wanted their own country. And so they're rebelling against the Indian government. And that might be one reason why the governor has been killed, or it might not. So I had a lot of fun writing The Age of Darkness. Now, you talk about some of the other books that I've written. So now and again, we writers are allowed to expand our imaginations. Because the truth about the publishing industry is that if you're successful with one type of book, they want you to carry on writing the same kind of book because, they know that people are buying it and they're making money. But as writers, we have an itch to scratch, and that is largely our imagination, and sometimes it does stretch far and wide. Now, I wrote a psychological thriller, as you say, The Girl in Cell A, because I love psychological suspense thrillers, but I also love small town American fiction. The Girl in Cell A is set in a small fictional town called Eden Falls in the southern part of the United States of America. And this town is a mining town. It's run by a ruthless dynasty called the Wyclerks, and the golden son of the dynasty is murdered. And it's the daughter of the housekeeper, a young woman named Oriana, who is convicted of the murder at age 17, and she's sent off to prison. And then the book proceeds in two narratives. In one narrative, we see Oriana arriving in prison to be interviewed by her prison therapist because Oriana says she can't remember what happened that day. And so the therapist is trying to break open the black box of her memory to see what might have occurred. And in the second narrative, which takes place 18 years later, she's released from prison and now she's in her 30s and she comes back to Eden Falls to try and figure out the mystery for herself. And so what we have is a murder mystery. We have a big family saga because this small American town, like most of small town America, it hasn't changed over time. It's caught in this bubble, this stasis. And so when she returns, she finds that everybody still remembers exactly what they think she did. And they're the same people there who are ranged against her. So they think she's a murderer. She thinks the murderer is out there. And so we proceed with this narrative. And of course, like all suspense and psychological thrillers, there's lots of twists and turns along the way. So I had a lot of fun writing that. And in a minute, I'll tell you about the Bond.
Yeah, so I have to say, Vaseem, so the highlight of my day today, Vaseem, is going to be this interviewing you. But the second highlight is when I get back in my car later on, because I'm currently listening in audio to The Girl in Cell A, and I am just absolutely engrossed. So the rest of the day is sort of getting in the way of of me getting back to it, but it's really great.
Well, Emma, I would love to know if you actually get the twist before the ending. So.
It's highly unlikely. I'm one of those people that you can literally present it in front of me and I won't I won't see it. But that, to me, I enjoy the book because I'm never one that, I don't even look for it now. I don't even try and sort of suss it out because I know I'm never going to do it. But then to me, the enjoyment when it's revealed is, on an epic scale for someone like me. So but I'm absolutely loving it. So I can thoroughly recommend that one. And the next one actually that's going to be on my list is The Quantum of Menace. So that's where I'm going next. So with that in mind, I wondered if you can just sort of tell us about really how you come about, because that's not, it's obviously the James Bond legacy is huge, and that franchise is huge. So can you sort of tell us a little bit about how that came to be, and if you felt any extra pressure really writing this spin-off series, with it having such a huge following, and were you already a fan? Did you already love Bond?
Yeah, a huge fan. I grew up watching, first of all, the James Bond films. Roger Moore was my James Bond because I was a teenager when I started watching Bond, and my dad and I loved watching Roger Moore. My mum, not so much, and that's because every time James Bond got amorous on screen, she would make me change the channel for fear of my teenage brain being corrupted. But I began to read the Bond books later on, and I was approached by the Ian Fleming estate, basically his family and some other people, because they'd been reading my Malabar House novels, and what they wanted was a series of crime novels, not spy novels, where Q, who is the science bod from MI6, he takes center stage and plays amateur detective. So the first book in that series, which we finally agreed upon, is called, as you say, Quantum of Menace. And what we see is Q, who is age 50 in my rendition. So he's neither Desmond Llewellyn, neither is he Ben Whishaw. He's somewhere in the middle. He's booted out of MI6 by the new M, and he decides to go back to his hometown, a small town a couple of hours out from London, and he's going back to investigate the mysterious death of his childhood friend, who is a quantum computer scientist, hence the title Quantum of Menace. And Q has been estranged from this town, his family, the people he left behind for 3 decades, and we find out why as we get into the book. But it's essentially a small town mystery where Q, as I said, plays amateur detective. And as far as having extra pressure on me, of course, with an iconic brand like that, there's always going to be some pressure, mainly because I didn't want hordes of Bond fans coming around my house and chucking bricks through the window if they didn't like what I'd written. And it is a departure. As I said, it's not a spy novel. So this is aimed so the publishers basically have said that this is aimed somewhere between Mick Herron's Slow Horses novels and Richard Osman's Thursday Murder Club. So if you like either of those, you probably get on with Quantum of Menace. There's a lot of dry humor because Q is a dryly humorous man. And of course, there is this possible murder mystery at the heart of the whole thing. Overall, it's been a wonderful experience. I've had a lot of fun doing it.
Though the Girl in Cell A and the Q novels are quite different in setting, at least from the Indian novels, there is a sort of central theme. Crime is central to them as the new works as well as the original ones. What is it about the crime genre that fascinates you? Not just in your literary career, but in your academic career as well.
Yeah, so Mark, we're human beings. As human beings, we are fascinated by the dark side, aren't we? I mean, you go to a tea party hosted by the most quaint of old ladies, and they just love a good murder. And I think we can thank Agatha Christie in large part for that. The truth is that because most of our lives are not mundane, but we don't tend to transgress. Most human beings are generally speaking rule followers. So the idea of people not only breaking rules, but going to the extreme ends of rule breaking, murder, kidnap, theft, fraud, all of those things that are the spice of very good crime novels. That gives us a titillation, that gives us a thrill. And it means that we can explore these dark seas while sitting on our sofas and while listening in the case of the Caliber audience, while listening to these people. I mean, I love driving up and down the country to various book festivals, and over the last few years I've got into just having audiobooks on, and they nearly always tend to be crime books. The truth is, you hinted at the fact that for 20 odd years I have worked at a place called the Department of Security and Crime Science at University College London. I should say I'm not a professor, I'm not an academic. I manage academics, which is like herding very bright cats around. But we work on lots of really fabulous topics. And one of the themes that comes through is that, contrary to what crime fiction tells you, there are no real criminal masterminds, right? As much as we love Hannibal Lecter, and I do love Hannibal Lecter, and I know he's a cannibal, but he's also an incredibly smart, intelligent man who only tends to eat people who are impolite. So I reckon I'd get away with it. I think I'd be very polite in Hannibal Lecter's presence, and I'd probably not have my liver eaten. Um, the truth is that most crime is the result of opportunity and circumstances. In the right circumstances, any one of us could commit a serious crime, and you only have to look at the number of people who are convicted of getting into a fight after they're drunk, or driving are under the influence, and then that ends up in an incident which leads to them being convicted of a crime. And when you look at crimes against women, 90% of murders of women, or serious assaults against women, are committed by people, men that they know. They might be in a relationship or are in their close family circle. So the true criminal mastermind is rare, but the fact that these people, any one of us, could be a criminal given the right circumstances, I think that adds an extra reason why we find crime so fascinating.
Now, Vaseem, your amazing success as a crime writer, and obviously, indeed, your kind of background as well, means you're given different opportunities to get involved with. And one of those I just want to allude to, as you were being elected as the chair of the Crime Writers Association, which was in 2023, which I know has ended now because I think it's just a 2-year, is it a 2-year tenancy for that one? But just in terms of that, what did holding that position mean to you, and kind of what did it involve?
Oh, lots of massive lunches and meetings. I joke. There were medium-sized lunches only, people.
There should be some benefits, though, shouldn't there? So you should get some perks with the job.
It was a great honor. So, for those who don't know, the Crime Writers Association is the oldest and largest association of crime writers in the UK. It's probably nearly 75 odd years old. It runs something called the Daggers, which are the biggest awards for crime fiction in the world. Agatha Christie was one of the earliest recipients of one of these awards. And I was elected as the very first non-white person to chair the Crime Writers Association. So an incredible honor. Very glad to do it for 2 years. And one reason for that, of course, is that representation is important. I think, if when I came into this industry 11 odd years ago, there were no other, or almost no other British Asians writing crime fiction. Plenty writing literary fiction, massive tomes about the Raj or immigrant angst, etc., etc. Nothing wrong with those books, but there was nobody writing the kind of books that I wanted to read, which are, crime books, mystery novels. That's changed greatly, and largely it's changed because of the efforts of the industry, the efforts of people like yourselves, and most importantly, because of people like your listeners. Because I was saying this to you earlier, off air, you can write the best book in the world. But if readers don't know about that book, and if readers don't vote with their feet by buying the book, borrowing the book, listening to the book, then that means that our publishing careers are very short-lived. And so for me, being chair of the Crime Writers Association was simply trying to help that process of spreading the word that anyone can write crime fiction from any background, and it's just another way of opening the doors and making this industry, this writing industry, democratic. And I'm sure that your audience, more than others, completely understand the need for representation and inclusion.
Well, and carrying on for that, so your books also open more doors because they, as I've alluded to earlier with, myself listening to The Girl in Cell A, your books are made accessible, which into audio, which is the format that our members and other members that, other people that might use our service hopefully in future, is the format that they need to be able to enjoy reading. So I just wondered, is that a process that you might have any involvement in at all? You've already said that, you kind of audiobooks has actually become a little bit part of your life in terms of sort of travelling and listening to them. But do your books are they're fantastically well narrated. The characters are really great, so that the voices are obviously very well chosen. But do you as an author have any input into that process?
Well, I get the illusion of input. So what happens is that whenever I have a new series, my publisher will send me sort of three clips of three possible narrators, and I have the illusion of being able to choose. But if I choose the wrong one, I get an email back a couple of weeks later saying, on second thoughts, the sales team feels that the other narrator would be would be the best one for the job. I tend not to argue. I mean, I'm not J.K. Rowling. I don't have the power to command my publisher. I've done reasonably well over the t last 10 years. I have a big audience, in different countries around the world. But I'm a very laid back person, and I believe that if experts know better than me, and my publishers are clearly a big publisher, they know better than me, I let them make the choice. As far as audiobooks are concerned, I mean, I don't have to tell your audience about the joy of immersing yourself into a story by way of listening to it. Not only do I listen to audiobooks in the car, but I like to go for a walk every day with an audiobook on. And if you ask me what I've been listening to recently, I've been listening to all sorts. I've been listening to the Booker Prize winning Shuggie Bain. I've been listening to a crime novel by Ben Aranovich called The Hanging Tree, one of his Rivers of London series. So all sorts.
Just keeping with the audio thing for a minute, you joined the world of podcasting and co-host a crime fiction podcast with fellow author Abir Mukherjee. Can you tell us a bit about that podcast?
Well, sure. The podcast has been going for quite a few years now, and it's called Murder Junction. And basically, what we do is we talk to the most famous crime writers in the world, and also new crime and mystery and thriller writers. So anyone you can think of, we've had on the show: Anne Cleeves, Lee Child, Val McDermid, David Baldacci, Dean Koontz, basically anyone, Richard Osman, anyone you can think of has been on the show. And what we do is we keep it fun. As you've probably got from this interview, you'll realize that I'm a person who has a sense of humor, and Abir, my fellow writer, who is also a brilliant writer, who writes a brilliant series set in 1920s India, in Calcutta. We both try and keep things lively and fun, and occasionally we look at true crimes from history as well to make it slightly different. It's been an absolute joy. It's called Murder Junction. If you dip into a couple of episodes, you'll quickly find out they're only about half an hour or so long. You'll quickly see that we try and keep things fun for our listeners.
Yeah, it is very good as well. So I would thoroughly recommend that one. I can't believe you got Dean Koontz as well. I don't think I've ever seen him interviewed anywhere.
Not only did we get Dean Koontz once, but he was so impressed that he told his publicist that he's never been on a podcast like that, where we basically just crack jokes with him, because most podcasts he goes on are all very serious about, oh, you're a literary superstar, Dean, and we called him Uncle Dinesh. So we adopted him basically, so he had to come back.
Oh, brilliant. Oh, no, fantastic. So we've already mentioned that this is National Year of Reading this year, and that's all about trying to encourage people to read for fun and enjoyment and try and address the declining reading for pleasure. So what we're doing in order to inspire people to sort of, start their own reading journeys, really, we're asking everyone the question, what book, experience or even story made you a reader?
Well, I'll give you a couple, because one is for very young people. So it's called Watership Down, by Richard Adams, which I read when I was, must have been 8 or 9. It's a great big book about rabbits, rabbits who are turfed out of their home and then have to go on this amazing adventure journey across the English countryside, and until they find a new home, and they encounter all sorts of dangers along the way. And it was just such an amazing experience to follow an adventure story which had lots of darkness. These are quite murdery rabbits. They kill each other, they get killed, they get savaged by dogs, and all sorts. But it was also beautifully written. It has one of the most wonderful sentences in English literature, in my opinion, to begin the book. It starts with "The primroses are over." And this foreshadows the fact that opening chapter or so is about the fact that these rabbits are about to be gassed out of their warren. And this is not something I'd ever thought about. I grew up in concrete jungle East London. I'd never seen real rabbits in the countryside before. So I think that more than anything else is a reason for getting into reading, to take us into these experiences that we don't possibly experience every day. And lots of people write to me from around the world to say that they've never been to India or they intend to go to India one day. And in the meantime, the India that I show them evokes these senses and these smells and these sights and these experiences that they can't perhaps experience themselves. So National Year of Reading, I think that's the focus, trying to get people to understand that books are not just, it's not just about the reading, it's about where it takes you.
Who are your writing, and this is one for me, your cricket heroes?
My cricket hero, so uh, your listeners, some of them might know, some of them won't know. The fact is that I'm a cricket obsessive. You know, I've been playing it for 40 years, badly, according to my wife. Um, But you know what? Like any other thing, if you love something, you enjoy it and you pursue it with passion, you keep doing it. Now I'm at such an age, I'm 52 now, so I try and play as much as I can, but I'm usually at book festivals and I also coach and teach youngsters. My cricket heroes are, well, when I grew up, I follow the England team because I grew up in an era where there was no other TV channels, right? There's three TV channels. So David Gower is my was my huge hero. I could watch him bat all day long. And then when I lived in India, I also fell in love with the batting of Sachin Tendulkar. So I suppose those are my two great heroes.
Now, we can't possibly let you go, Vaseem, without asking if you're able to give us a sneak peek into your next project. And I've got a special request from Mark, actually, who's just finished The Edge of Darkness and has withdrawal symptoms. So he's asking if you can write another Malabar House book, at least about one a week, just to keep him going, because he's really struggling with not having anything to read.
Okay, so yes, I am almost finished with the seventh in the Malabar House series. It's called The Last Shot.
Yes.
It's So it starts dramatically with the discovery of a body stuffed into the back of a Rolls Royce in a dim alley in the city of Bombay in 1951. And it happens to be the body of an English film director who has been working in the Indian film industry in Bombay. And I'm not calling it Bollywood deliberately because back then it wasn't named Bollywood. That only came along a few decades later. So then we see Persis and Archie follow through as to exactly why and how this man and who might have murdered him. Um, and also later this year, so the last shot will not come out till 2027. Later this year, at the end of October, we will see the second in the Q series, which is called The Man with the Golden Compass. And in this one, we see Q, who's done such a good job in the first book, Quantum of Menace, that the police have asked him to come on as a civilian consultant to help them with another case, the murder of a technology millionaire who has moved to this small town where Q has now moved back to, Q's hometown. And he's bought a stately home and he's been gruesomely murdered in his stately home. And when the police find his body, they find also a circular object coated in gold and inscribed with runes. So it's a mixture of some historical clues together with modern technology. And of course, Q is once again playing amateur detective.
Brilliant. Well, that's just made your day, Mark,
Yep,
hasn't
it
it?
does. Yeah. I've got to wait till 2027.
Yeah, I may have misheard your earlier question, Mark. Did you ask me about my cricketing heroes or my writing heroes?
Well, I was asking about both the writing for our project and the cricket
He
for
was
me.
very excited about the cricket. That was what he wanted.
Huge fan of Salman Rushdie, whose book Midnight's Children, which chronicles India moving from pre-independence through independence. So that's one of the reasons that I write the Malabar House novels. But my great hero and the reason that I'm a novelist today is a man I've already mentioned, Sir Terry Pratchett, and his Discworld novels are for me not only was he our greatest humorist in the UK. I mean, he sold 100 million copies, so I think that's a claim that I can make. But also, he's an enormous inspiration because his books, they are so slyly brilliant at poking fun at society and people's foibles and the way that we are as human beings, that I think that they should be essential reading for everybody, especially politicians who clearly at this moment in time seem to be going through some kind of meltdown of taking themselves way too seriously and causing lots and lots of angst for people instead of just chilling out a little bit, trying to understand the world and trying to solve the world's problems through dialogue rather than sort of, rhetoric. I also love the fact that in the Discworld novels, you have one of the greatest characters in fiction who is a librarian. So he's a librarian who works at a wizarding university in the Discworld novels, and through an accident of magic, he's turned into an orangutan, and he and he's quite a stroppy orangutan as well. And I know that Emma is a librarian, and I know that many of your listeners, like me, love the libraries and have probably met lovely librarians, though I doubt that anyone has met a stroppy orangutan as their local librarian.
That's great. Thank you so much, Vaseem, for that. Can we expect maybe, will you dust your comic fantasy novel off at some point with that and potentially give it another go?
Occasionally I will go back and have a look at that novel that I wrote when I was age 17, just so I can see how awful it was. And that always gives me encouragement because then I can say to myself, yeah, you're definitely not that bad anymore.
Oh, brilliant. Oh, Vaseem, thank you so much for joining us today. Yeah. You've given us a real insight into your writing. I really hope we've encouraged our members and listeners to discover your books if they haven't yet. Mark and I can absolutely thoroughly recommend them. And the range of your writing means I think there's something for everyone. And we've only just sort of really touched on the humour in your books. And obviously it comes out very clearly in chatting to you as well. But there's loads of humour littered through your books as well. So along with a really engaging and satisfying read, you can get additional laughs along the way too, which is brilliant. And for me, also reading the Indian novels, what I love about them is I go away and learn. So I know, basics about sort of India history, but what you've introduced to me is given me a little spattering to go on, and then I go away and find out more about it because you've developed an interest for me as well, which is I love about books too that do that. So if you're a Calibre member, you can discover Vaseem's titles amongst our audiobook collection, and for a complete list of all Vaseem